What's going on YouTube? JT is Reborn here, and welcome back to another edition of my DC comic book reviews. And in this video, we're talking about The Boy Wonder Book 1. This is a DC Black Label book. It is written and drawn by Juni Ba, and this is basically a story centered around Damian Wayne. It kind of, almost like it's an Elseworlds storyline, but if you're not familiar with Damian as a character, this kind of gives you a rough idea of like who he is, going over his history and kind of fitting it within this particular story. So if you know Damian for a long time, this is kind of like an older take on Damian, like Damian before where he's at now in terms of like having grown up a lot more. He's still kind of figuring things out. I mean, you have the story like kind of told about, you know, Damian and how he's this kind of prince, and then like his dad had his kingdom, he had his 3 adoptive sons. Damian came into the mix, and you know, when he now before, like I said, they're kind of recapping a lot of the stuff when Damian first showed up. Obviously, when he first showed up beforehand, he killed somebody to try and kind of impress his father. Like, oh, look, I took care of the criminal, but his dad gave him shame. Now, he did this while in the Robin uniform and this sort of thing, but again, he was never really like fully trusted by his father, and you feel kind of the weight of the world on his shoulders because he grew up in 2 very different environments. You had the League of Assassins with Ra's, you know, much more cruel and all the stuff that he was kind of ingrained to, and then obviously his father's principles are very different from that, and it's him trying to kind of impress his father and kind of find his own self-worth in this world as Robin, if you will. So he goes off on his own to try and do something he thinks would impress him, and he thinks he's going to face off against some demonic things, but turns out to be Clayface. Then Dick and Babs show up. I guess they're married and have a kid in this particular storyline based on what their conversations are back and forth, and Damian ends up kind of getting saved, and during the whole situation, like he kind of sees something. He sees kind of the trust that those 2 have in each other and the way they work together as a unit, and like it kind of like brought him onto something. So Clayface is defeated. Damian goes off on his own because he can't really face them at the time. He also helps some old lady at one point, and he gets kind of that reassurance of like being a hero, which is a nice little moment. And then that lady seems to get abducted by some weird demonic entity thing, as he calls it, like some flying serpent thing, and that's basically where the next issue goes ahead. So we see him learning that respect, start to gain that respect and admiration for who Dick Grayson is in this particular storyline. Like I said, this is an Elseworlds thing, so you can't really like fit it within current continuity. It's kind of doing its own thing, kind of taking the history of Damian and kind of molding it into its own storyline. So if you're not really familiar with this character, I think this is fine for that. But if you've kind of read a lot of stuff, it's kind of covering a lot of familiar tropes that we've kind of seen with him. Like I said, the killing of somebody and the disappointment of his father. Like you don't have that well-defined relationship with Dick Grayson like you have in the mainline continuity, or like all the things we've kind of spent years doing. This is kind of a refresher on that. Like it's doing its own thing, but kind of like starting from scratch, if you will. So if you like that aspect of Damian, you want to kind of see something like him explored in that capacity, I think this is probably a good comic book for that. But if it's kind of something you're kind of tired of seeing, like, oh, we've already gotten this kind of storyline with Damian, then it's probably not going to necessarily be for you. I did enjoy the artwork by Juni Ba. I thought it kind of gave a unique style, and it told the story well. And I think, too, having somebody who is both the writer and the artist, like, it makes things all the more personal. Like, so you can get the dialogue and the art to match up a lot better in specific ways, if you will. So, but yeah, I still enjoyed this thing. It was kind of nice to kind of go back to, like, some of the older ways of Damian, kind of look at this whole Elseworld storyline and trying to figure out how the continuity kind of works, how are the relationships in this thing. I didn't see a cast in this one, and I didn't see Steph or anything like that, so I guess it's just, or Duke, or so it's pretty much just the 4 main Robins beforehand, the 4 main Bat Boys, like Dick, Damian, Tim, and Jason. Now the next issue looks to showcase Jason, but we also had Barbara Gordon as Batgirl in it. So I did enjoy this one overall. I mean, Damian is my favorite of the Robins. I like seeing him grow that admiration and respect for Dick Grayson. Yeah, it's kind of stuff that we've seen before, but since this is an out of continuity storyline, I'm kind of okay with it to an extent, because I like to see him already kind of grown past a lot of the stuff. But this is an Elseworlds thing. It's kind of starting up from the beginning, doing its own thing, so it has to kind of reestablish things, if you will. It's like when you're doing an adaptation of something, you have to kind of go into it. It's not exactly the same continuity, like it's not the comics per se, but it is, well, I mean, in this case, it is a comic book, but it has to reestablish things and reestablish the characters and kind of showcase, like, what makes them them. So, but I did like it overall. Nothing I'd say is downright mind-blowing or amazing, but I think if you're not too familiar with this character, I think this is a good one for, you know, maybe somebody who just kind of wants to know a rough idea about Damian. I think this is kind of a good recap in its own kind of unique way. So, but yeah, that's all I really have to say about it. What did you think of it? Post your comments down below. Be sure to like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the YouTube channel for more content, hit that bell for notification, all that other fun stuff. I got one more DC comic book review I'm going to be covering, which is the latest issue of Batman by Zdarsky, and then we should be good to go. All right, well, that's all I have to say. And as always, take care now. Bye-bye then, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace out.